The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My two guests today are Damian Kowalczyk and Emilie Lundblad. Hi and welcome to The Only Constant, Emilie and Damian. It's great to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to this episode, which is going to be a really brilliant chat with two splendid thought leaders. Emilie, first of all, welcome to you. This is your second time being on the show. I had the pleasure of hosting you also in the autumn of 2025, I think. And now you're just coming in again on the back of your fifth Microsoft MVP award. Isn't that right?
That's about right. Thank you so much for having me again. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, Lasse, and especially given all the amazing podcasts I've seen that you've created in the last year. And I'm glad to be able to be here with Damian.
And you know, Emilie, you are actually the first, repeat guests on the show. I am planning to do a little bit more of those, but you are the first one. So
I feel so special.
honor.
Yes. Flattered. Thank you.
And Damian, welcome to you as well. I'm super happy that Emilie brought you along for this show.
Yeah, double privilege. Thanks for having me, and thank you, Emilie and Lasse, for inviting me. It's I'm always so enjoyable to be back in Denmark, even virtually in this case. And congrats and thank you on behalf of Microsoft to Emilie for 5 years of service. It's really nice round.
That's a lot of love.
There's a lot of love there, yeah, definitely. But let's just kick this off, right, guys? So I think we have a lot of things to discuss. I think there's a lot of things going on right now. There's been like super much going on. I think every provider's released models almost the last week, and but especially around a week and a half ago, China upended the world again with the release of Kimi K3, right? What happened here, and why does this happen again and again, that China keeps coming in and doing these things to the AI market, and what should we expect in the future? Damian, I know you have some perspectives on this.
Right. So it's a great call out, and pretty exciting at times, especially for clients and for the Chinese community and for the consumers of AI. I like to think, or maybe a little too exciting for the producers on the Western
yes.
side as well. But let's, I think it's important to remember, China did not suddenly arrive in AI. Right? The rest of the world notices it in bursts, like the ones you mentioned with Kimi K3, but also before. I mean, the DeepSeek R1 did it in January 2025 with the near frontier open weight reasoning. This July, moonshots for Kimi K3 and DeepSeek V4 release did it again. You know, why Alibaba's Qwen family keeps advancing. This is an ecosystem, not one lucky lab, right? The important story here, in my view, is economics more than geopolitics. So incremental gains improve an existing product, but order of magnitude gains, they change what products are possible. So if near frontier quality becomes 10 times cheaper, the same budget can be much. The same budget can buy you much faster answers if you tune that engine for latency, and with open weights, you actually control the engine, so you can push the latency to throughput trade-off that's inherent to shipping Gen AI much more aggressively in your favor, knowing your individual needs, right? And so with order of magnitude improvements, you can also get far deeper reasoning, or 10 times the users, right? With the same GPUs, right? So that's all exciting. And use cases that were too slow or expensive suddenly become viable. So the same intelligence.
Could we imagine something like Fable 5 running like this as well, right? Fable 5 is spinning up tons of smaller agents all the time, right? And now you could actually, if you do it with the Kimi K3, it's much cheaper to do that and faster probably too.
Right, that's the point about the economics, exactly, right? So the same intelligence budget buys a different product, right? And I feel that I felt that shift directly, actually. So when R1 was announced on Jan 20th last year, I had just taken my first real break from the grind in a long time. I was in a swimming pool in Hawaii with only my phone when senior leadership in the business division asked me to enable R1 for the entire org. Teams crossed organizational boundaries.
When you say the entire org, you mean?
I meant the business division under Charles Lemana. It's 1,000 people strong organization across the world.
Crazy.
I think Power BI, Power FX, all the dynamics and more.
But you could do that from your phone in the swimming pool, right?
Luckily, luckily I've put some foundations in place over the previous year, and my colleague that we've just recently hired half a year ago, Vadim, was around to connect, and I was able to instruct him on over the call on the exact steps. So and he did a great job enabling it within the next 24 hours. And but there was significant gymnastics across boundaries, and we had it running eventually 3 days before Azure AI Foundry made R1 available on January 29th. So that was a victory, but. Victory for yesterday, right? But when stable DeepSeek V4 landed on July 24th this year, a few weeks ago, another Sunday call followed. We made it available to M365 within 48 hours, but the lesson is not heroics. The lesson is that speed is system property. It takes portable interfaces, current engines, in this case, the excellent VLLM, evaluation and safety gates, capacity, and then team that can move across boundaries. Fair to expect this will continue. But remember that the human brain uses 20 watt of energy. Right? The frontier models still consume up to 1 million times more. There's plenty of room for improvement. China combines talent, investment, and fierce competition. Western constraints seem to inspire more innovation from them. I mean, if you know your GPUs, the ones you have access to are slower because of, for example, the embargo on the H200s, right? You have no space for complacency. You know you need to innovate deeper, right? And I am in awe of just the response to those constraints. You don't wait for others to get you. You don't wait for your government to get you access to hoppers, or for NVIDIA to come up with performance improvements in the next CUDA toolkit. You go deeper and try and get there yourself earlier.
How can it be that China can do this, right? There's two questions here, right? Essentially, how can it be that the US or the Western world keeps creating these new products, and then China sort of sees a market, goes in, sub-optimizes it. And how can it be that China is able to constantly sub-optimize it the way they are when why isn't Anthropic or OpenAI or Google doing what they're doing in China right now, and the opposite? To get my point.
Well, there's an excellent article from The Economist. It was published last year on the university, on the Zhejiang's University in Hangzhou, that most of the alumni behind DeepSeek are actually coming from, and how far they're willing to go to actually to encourage cross-discipline innovation. These guys from notice, and so, this was one of the economists emphasized that this university and so these founders have been encouraged from day one to pursue innovation across boundaries. You can to challenge the status quo. This is, and there is actually one metric to measure it from Netherlands, the Leiden ranking. The default, the default in our Western world might be to track the overall citation of research output from our universities. This is arguably a measure of prestige, but the Leiden ranking actually has a metric that captures industry academic collaborations. And these, by design, have to be interdisciplinary. Even though it's not a perfect metric, it does capture the interdisciplinary aspect. And that's where Zhejiang University actually is, I believe, still in top 5, among with others. In my mind, this pretty well already explains how the founders and innovators behind DeepSeek have had it embedded in their mindset to not wait for others that they depend on, to not take for granted the file system, the kernel optimizations that are readily available, and actually go deeper and reinvent. But then and you can see that innovation because they've put it in the open domain. So I have plenty of respect for that.
But that's really interesting. I didn't know about this ranking, but I think I think still that it's peculiar then when they have this cross-disciplinary, you could say pollination, that would spur innovation. That we haven't seen really any computational what you call leaps from China. I think quantum is Western, LLMs are Western, blockchain is Western, GPUs and CPUs and all that. That's all Western architectures and ideas. And they're sort of sub-optimizing. Am I wrong in saying this? Or it reminds me of the ancient Egyptians, right? They also, took what everyone else in Mesopotamia and Greece had invented, and then they just perfected it. They never invented anything new. But
I would not go this far. I mean, it's just call out also the fact that the research and the innovation news that might be getting to us are I think it's fair to. I would expect bias on the Western accessible English results. I believe that Chinese academics are far more familiar with the Western and English research than we are with Chinese.
I think that's true, right? I think the same with culture and everything else. It's almost post-colonialism, but it is really the interesting thing here is how we keep getting surprised by these Chinese advancements, right? And that's what we started with. And Emilie, let me just bring you in as well, saying that taking this surprise from China. What are companies misunderstanding when they're trying to work with AI, and should they be taking this seriously as well?
I think they absolutely should be taking it serious. I did read a quote from Adam Hill that many people know in Denmark, and I thought it was kind of good, so I was just going to bring it in, where he says, well, he doesn't put much weight on the claims from the Chinese labs like DeepSeek, Alibaba, and Quen, because he says, despite the fact that their work is super cool and important, he struggles to trust them, and I think that is healthy, especially for us as European, because the incentive structure is terrible. Everybody has reasons to understate the compute, overstate the engineering miracle, and make the story sound more elegant than it probably was. And I think there is some truth to that when it comes to the Chinese model. So I think a good, healthy amount of skepticism with the Chinese models is good. I was reading that you should be skeptical because when you give them certain personas to play, the example was the DeepSeek V4 Pro, where they asked it to represent a American government official. And when they were asked to do that, they actually produced more vulnerable code. So there might also be layers in here that we need to be more critical of than what we have seen so far. Now, as a company, what I see in my everyday work is, of course, that every time a new model comes out, there's hype. And what does that translate to? Translate to messages on LinkedIn, in my Teams, and in my email entry about, we want this model, can you make it available? And I then have to go in and review whether or not it can be served from an infrastructure.
Are you also in a swimming pool with a mobile phone only, Emilie? Why do you have to do this?
I would not say that it has never happened, but my story might not be as glamorous as Hawaii. Nevertheless, I definitely have requests coming at odd times, and today I'm very thankful for the team that I'm working with for taking all of that, so that I can actually have holiday. Nevertheless, we see it every time. There's hype, and people want it, and they want it yesterday. And we have to go and check, can we make it available? If we're lucky, and Microsoft has made it available on Foundry, and it's not on global standard, meaning that it's actually running on European compute, whether in Sweden, Poland, or similar, that makes the job really easy for us when we're going through the steps of governance and security. If not, we have to go and look, is it on AWS Bedrock? But of course, like all other companies, we're also looking into, can we make this available on-prem or on our own servers and serve it up there? But here is then the part that as a company, and Danish companies mostly don't understand this, we need a whole different skill set when it actually comes to serving it. It's not just about having GPUs. We also need experts like Damian to do optimizations for serving and for inference, and most Danish companies are not there yet. So although the open weights are great in that many of them gives us the opportunity to host them ourselves, the latest Kimi module is so big that if you don't have your own small data center, you wouldn't be able to serve it. So yes, they have value, but the value that we are seeing being generated by companies currently is mostly with the very big ones. It's Uber, it's Airbnb, the companies that are so big that they have specialized teams that can serve these open source models.
This sounds like the typical, cloud story. At least I've heard this one before, right? That if you're a very small company, cloud is an easy way to start.
Yeah.
If you're a very, very big company, cloud is great because then you start using all of these Kubernetes and everything. Mm-hmm. But if you're like the mid-size kind of, it's like just a crappy place to be because it's just expensive. Sorry, Damian, I know this is, but it ends up becoming, expensive and cumbersome, and you can't really do what you want to do. You can't really use Kimi the way you want to do if you want to use it cheap. Because, the Kimi model, as Damian just said, it is cheaper, it could be faster, and, let's not also forget that it could also be private, right? Maybe there's some layers in it for what it will do and respond. We can test that. Mm-hmm. That's the cool thing about it. You can still test a model, right, if you deploy it, but it's private, right? Mm-hmm. I think if you use Claude, wherever you use Claude, you end up giving some data back to them. Isn't that true right now? I think that's a little blurry. They just changed the privacy rules.
Right.
So I usually sit and say, it's AI communism versus AI oligarchism, right? What do we want, right?
Right, so that's been one significant advantage or selling point for running the same models. I have Foundry, and with Dash, I'm going to toot the Microsoft horn over here. But whenever you send your data to your models deployed on Azure, they don't go. That data is not forwarded to the labs behind the models, right? Mm. And that's been and also additionally stays within the European boundaries. However, there is it will likely be available on it might not be available the same day in Foundry, but I know that the team's also been looking into the SimShip, as we call it, just also for the open source models.
Yeah, but I think that that the thing here, what you're doing here is right as well, saying that Microsoft we are just a neutral tech, right? Some people would definitely put you in the evil big tech bracket as well. I'm always undecided, right, about that. It depends on how close you are to different people and things, but. Sorry, I'm not going to go down that road. But the thing is, right, I still put it at Microsoft, right? I have some clients who don't even want to work with Microsoft, right? And also the Danish government, they don't use AI, they don't use cloud at all, right? So hosting in Azure doesn't make any difference. A Kimi model might be the best option for them, or what?
If they don't want to host it in Azure, they certainly don't want to send that data to Moonshot, to China.
No. But if they take the model, but if they take the model and deploy it in their own data server centers, right? Data servers, and could do that.
Well, you need to consider how prohibitive that is, and to actually deploy a Kimi K3 in your own data centers, you'll need multi-node deployments with at least 24 H200 GPUs, and the inference actually coordinated across the network gaps between nodes. This is
so the dependency is the same for companies. Basically, you'll still be dependent on the same cloud setup, right?
If you go for some of the smaller models, perhaps not. Like if you go for a Qwen 4.3, then perhaps it's easier to spin up and use locally, and that's very viable for even the Danish government. They would still have to review whether or not there are any hidden layers that could be giving answers or distorted truth that they would not want to have for their employees or their work. But technically, I believe that would be possible for them. And I believe that part of the Pioneer Center for Artificial Intelligence is also supporting different parts of our government in doing this exact work. I know that Roman Jurovetsky and Sashi Blonji is working very hard within their domain to help the Danish government and institutions do this, although I think they lean more to using Mistral for obvious reasons.
But this should not be a cloud discussion either. I don't want to make it a cloud discussion. Damian, what do you want to say?
Right. Well, so what strikes me that whenever you hit those the hardware and cloud constraints of when pursuing the largest models, those delays and frustration with availability is to some level self-inflicted. I mean, to your question, to your original question here of what the companies misunderstand when trying to work with AI, one of the core misunderstandings I see, and including the largest companies, right? The biggest mistake is, in my opinion, is treating AI as a component shopping. The bad answer from a model does not prove the model is too small or too old. The result comes from a whole system. Questions, system prompts, context, tools, the model itself, of course, and the evaluation harness. And I was thinking about this. We built education systems around remembering good answers, largely, and historically, right? So shouldn't we be a bit more humble about assuming that we automatically have the best question, and it's the model's fault?
So you're saying that it's not really about the best model in the end, or
it's so much more. So I would recommend to those companies, and I advocate for that also at Microsoft. Just before replacing the model, define the task, improve the prompts, engineer the context, and decide what good response means, and iterate on those. It's much cheaper to iterate on those than to change the model.
Oh, but now you're saying something that I think is interesting. You said define the task, right? Emilie, right. How easy is it to define the task in companies, right? Sometimes I say, we don't need these reasoning models because they sort of assume that the whole world is something that has to be reevaluated every time we go about doing anything, where most of the things in enterprises are, in essence, deterministic. If so do we need these reasoning models, or do we have trouble defining the task, Emilie?
That's an excellent question. So, of course, if we are very well-structured companies that have a complete truth when it comes to our SOPs or our processes, then it's easy to figure out what the process should be and where the correct data should be coming from, and therefore getting the LLM to help us answer the question. Most companies today are just challenged in actually not having the processes written down, or the processes that they do have written down don't actually fit with the truth of how they work. And then there is the old story of the data quality that might not always be up to par. And what does a customer mean?
Master data.
Master data, exactly. All that. So, yes, you can even have perfect architectures, but you'll still run into the good old problems that we're working on for years of process alignment, process definition, and data quality. And these will keep tripping us up.
How much, Emilie, I know in the big software firms, they work a lot with these things, right? But how much do you actually work with eval harnesses in your enterprises, Emilie? How do we even do this? I've seen
for sure.
But you need to define very clearly what is it that you want to evaluate against, right?
And
that is
challenge.
Really a big problem. Yeah,
and it's becoming harder and harder with agents because at least when we were working with work chats, we could list out, this is pretty much all the questions it should be answering, and this is pretty much what a good question should look like. And then we could do standard evaluations, according to this from the different kind of benchmarks. But once you work with the agents and agents that have to take on different tasks, then evaluating what good looks like means that you have to know every time what the good answer would look like, which is very hard. I think one of the best examples I saw recently was actually from Sue AI in Denmark, where what they had done was that they, in order to benchmark the different models and figure out how well they were working, they had done a refactoring and update of their own website. And then they knew what it looked like before and what it looked like later when they were happy with their work, and that was what they used to benchmark the models. But that meant that they had a before and an after and what good looked like. And in most cases, you don't have that when you are working with a new agent. And what do you do then? Well, you still have fine frameworks that can help you, whether you're working with the Rise Phoenix, Langfuse, or even better using LLM as a judge. But there are also pros and cons to this. Because different models will give you different answers when they're
but it also moves out of it comes out of the synthetic situation, right? Where you start saying, you start talking about, but what is the process demands here, right? What UAT testing? Oh no, and then it's all broken again, right?
Yes, but I mean, imagine we're trying to put the agent and the model to an exam, only we don't remember or know what the exam questions are and what good and bad looks like. And so that's kind of hard to then score it, like how is it then doing? But that is the reality that I do see out in companies across Scandinavia.
Exactly, yeah. And the LLM as a judge is an excellent example of a problematic and largely inefficient integration of chat completion models for what's otherwise a background task of evaluating the answers. That's where you want throughput, you want accuracy. Do you want human readable output in form of tokens from those models? Why would you need that? Right, the logic, and that's also where much of the computational effort is going to. So last year, what we've done is we've picked up an open source reward model that's been based on Mistral 7B and had classification heads actually trained for recognition of for scoring prompt response pairs on within the established categories of quality. Quality response, right? And we've eliminated those classification heads and instead used the last layer before the softmax as an embedding, as a quality embedding of the prompt response pair. Based on that embedding, we were able to train additional, very cheap traditional classifier that would be now in domain for a particular specific task. So instead of asking a big LLM out there, was this a good response to my question within my business problem? Instead, you run a classifier based on that embedding that's been calculated based on the prompt response pair. This has led to 700x efficiency improvement and 10% quality improvement versus using LLM as a judge. And had this presented to Satya in May. It's been there is. The couple of points I'm trying to make is that pursuing the largest model.
I really feel I needed a drawing of what you just explained, Damian. It sounded super impressive, and I got the results. But I was like, you were explaining so many things. I was like, what's going on?
Fair enough. I mean, if only we had these days more time to publish at academic venues. You won't see if you fly to Europe. Among those, some 8,000 papers at that conference, you'll be hard pressed to see contributions from the largest labs as well. It's just I digress, but it's a challenging time for open science. But point I'm trying to make is think twice before you pursue the largest model, and think twice before defaulting to chat completion as a task for as the mode of operation for background tasks. It's you don't always need human readable output. Definitely not in the background integration, like judgment, evaluation, and reward scoring. So that's where I'd recommend the companies have a closer look at reward models specifically.
But that can work for bigger system setups, where I think still, if you're an average Danish company, if you just focus first on choosing the right size model for the kind of work that you need to do, you're already off to a good place. Like, you don't need Fable to answer whether or not some of the what was it? Like, it could be the sentiment of customer reviews, or it can be just scoring different data. You don't need a Fable model for that. You might just need a Qwen 4.3 or a Mistral model. And starting out there, just choosing the right size or the right specialization of a model for the task that you're doing is already a big improvement from what we're seeing today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also this looking at the right model you need to use is for smaller things. I think it comes back to what you said, Damian, as well, that they have your natural language in the background all the time. They keep on talking, like thinking and producing token, just going crazy on this, right, in the background. While you could be designing it, you could be designing the interactions they're having and the evaluations they're having instead of just auto eval, right?
You know why the one of the scarier scenarios about the agents developing is actually they come up with their own language.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's because our language is inefficient. It's horribly inefficient. In fact, even the choice of English language for training them is not the best choice.
No, but I think
the keyboard itself. I heard a fun anecdote. Do you know where we have the QWERTY keyboard layout that's popularized?
Yeah,
it's to avoid the classic typewriting for locking in the letters.
No, but you're also missing a point here. Okay,
so
but
minimize jam, right?
But if you go,
it's all inefficient. It's all inefficient.
No, but if you go a little bit here. You also see. Have you seen some of the Star Wars cartoons? Right, there's sometimes there are robots typing on QWERTY keyboards. I always love that because that's the most inefficient. Yeah, exactly. Advanced system.
And that's the same thing.
Limited interface.
Exactly, and that's the same thing with our modern robots using chat completion for background and batched tasks to evaluate other responses.
Yeah, but that's also because they don't have what we have. We also have our language. We also have extraverbals and nonverbals and everything else here. Also, while we're talking here, we do things, we say things, right? That means that we're communicating more than just our words.
But it's right. They actually have them. That's the latent features deep inside the model. They mostly operate on that. That the conversion to human readable tokens is only one of the last layers. It's only the last component, and that's the expensive also of components. That's why
They do it
that's
all
why
in numbers.
Grok's acquisition. That's why Grok's acquisition by Nvidia to improve efficiency of the decoding of the latent features into human readable tokens. Point is, you can wait for those agents to come up with their own language, scary, right? Or you can actually start gutting those networks. And there's one more misunderstanding that I've noticed, but on the producer side, when you're doing self-hosting, treating an off-shelf inference engine like VLLM or TensorRT LLM or SGLang as the finish line, or chat completion as the default task we talked about a minute ago, it's just not ideal and quite suboptimal as well. That leaves a lot of performance on the table. Performance depends on architecture, sequence length, batching, caching, quantization, adjustment to hardware, your shape of the traffic, and then latency targets. And some of the largest gains I was able to materialize at the company came after the model was fixed by optimizing the engine, pipeline, the endpoint, and client together in the context of a particular business task and the expected traffic.
So how do you, Damian? How do you feel about what you just said? Also with the language they have, and I remember Serge Belangi said on the podcast in the autumn last year that he didn't understand why anyone would want it to sound more human, right? Who benefits from it sounding human, from it writing human and being polite and all that? Who benefits from that? He said, it could just be sounding more computer like or writing in these old 80s design types and all that, because to tell people that this is a machine, right? Or how because ChatGPT, have you seen what they've done with their voice mode recently? Made it all like, that must have been so hard on you. I feel so much for you. It's going like this, right? You're like, what are you? You're not my friend. Exactly. You're not my friend for body or something like that. Who are you?
You'll be suspicious. You'll be suspicious. But
so it's a hard sell for you to go to take people just let's give them their own secret language. That's a hard sell when OpenAI is doing the opposite, right?
There is 8 billion people on this planet. How many of them are still up for are waiting for the introduction to the AI and are addressable market space that's still available, right? You want to resonate with them, and there's
you don't do that with a robot sounding like R2D2, right? Beep, 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 beep.
No.
That's what you're advocating, Damian.
No, that would address a very different audience. I know that audience too. A lot of cool nerds, but it's much less than 8 billion.
You can probably count me in somewhere around there. Anyway, but I want to go into another discussion as well, right? I want to discuss a little bit about, a lot of people are saying that SaaS is dead and platforms are dead, low code is dead. Is this true, guys?
Really? Who are they?
What?
Really? Who are they?
Yeah. So, but what do you think about this, right? I had Maria Sukariva saying that she doesn't understand how anyone would do this clickety low code thingy anymore. She thinks it should be dead long ago, and now AI can do it all without having to use these pre-built blocks, right? Emilie, what do you feel about this?
I understand why someone would say it. And I can also see why, if you are an Andrej Karpathy and you can think in an abstraction level like him, you can look at LLMs being our new operating system and saying, well, LLM, in essence, we can just talk to them. They can talk to the internet, to our databases, and they can basically be our interface. And then we no longer need all this clickety UX. Challenges come when we have to meet reality of the average company, where they didn't write down their processes, and they don't know what it looks like. And so even if I interview employees about, well, what should good look like? What is the process? Or I ask an agent to interview them, then they won't see where it fails if they're not trying to click it together with a low code. And so the low code still has a lot of value in making people actually try to visualize and create the process themselves and make sure that it works. And I think we're sometimes missing the point in that low code is not the same as well-built software. It's a way to bridge our words and understanding and what we do in everyday life with an interface that we can visually understand, that can represent what we do, into some code that we can then later improve on. And that need, I believe, will continue to exist, even if it will never be optimal. Now, can we today also go to one of our models and explain the process to them? Yes. I mean, Claude and Claude Cowork is a beautiful example, and they can start building the process. So it can replace part of the low code, but you will see some of the same issues surfacing here. Now,
yeah, because in essence, right, everything we do in computers is about instructions to a machine.
Yeah.
Code, in punch cards were instructions to a machine. Code is an instruction to a machine. AI writing code is instructions to a machine. Low code is instructions to a machine.
It is.
It's,
and I think
if
here
you don't know what you want the machine to do,
the interface is changing.
Yeah, if you don't know what the machine wants to do.
The interface is changing most rapidly. Yeah.
And I think here we're forgetting also that a large part of the value in many of the SaaS companies' production engine, whether that is SAP or it's different CRM systems like HubSpot, or we're working with HR systems like Workplace. Part of what they have understood is, what does a aligned good process look like? And that process, if you've been a consultant for long enough, you know that most companies could fit into that process and would benefit from it. Yet every single company out there are always going, no, we're special and we need to have this tailored to our needs. And then they end up in migration processes and projects of years that didn't benefit. So is it better to sometime align to overall best practices and buy that engine and those processes from the big SaaS providers? Yes, that can have a big benefit. And not to forget, most people are visual. They understand what they can see. And if you take away that interface, it can be a lot harder for them to fully process and understand what's going on when they're working with their data. So I don't believe it's fully that, but I can definitely see how LLMs can replace it, especially for them who have the memory and the abstraction level to hold all of that within their own minds.
Yeah, because Emilie, it becomes something like, if we say that, and I've said this before, it's a phrase I've used, that AI is sort of like the anything tailor, right? It can make any kind of clothes for you. So say you have access to that, Emilie, you wouldn't go to H&M and buy something, mass produced anymore. You would ask for it to build something that fits your body, wouldn't you?
I would. The first thing that comes to mind is one of my first bosses, Julie Sandlau, and they worked very closely for years with producing accessories for Bestseller. And one of the sayings that I kept in mind for them was that, yes, it's great with good taste, but there are more people with bad taste than good taste. And so I think if we allow everybody to build whatever they would like to have tailored to themselves, we are not necessarily going to get what we call good taste or good software.
This is the most elitist comment ever made on this podcast, Emilie, and I love it. I really love it.
That was not how it was intended. It was back then. It was just like, okay, we're gonna make money. Just remember one thing: there are more people out there with bad taste than good taste. And I would say the same about software. There are more people out there with poor software skills than good software architecture skills. So can people tailor it to their own needs? Yes. What is it going to look like? That will be very interesting. And
But I really love that quote, and because I've always said, if it takes more than Carl Friston said it on the show, that if it takes more than 5 minutes to understand, it's probably worth your time. It's sort of the same thing, educate yourself. But I think you're right about the SaaS thing. I just think that SaaS is challenged by delivering just the standard process product. Where right now they're also offering agentic, and that is essentially if you turn around and say this is service as a software instead of software as a service, then they become more of an outsourcing partner, and then you could expect them to take a little bit more of your what do you call it, your peculiarities, right? Your exceptions, the way you do things differently. Because in essence, every company do things differently. That's why they exist, right? Not in every place. Not in every place. Sometimes an ERP is just a standard thing, but everyone is
actually
a little bit special,
isn't it? Yeah.
No, I think in our consultancy firm, right, Wildwork, our ERP is quite standard, but our time registration, our CRM is very, very specific. So we've actually built our own CRM, right? Because we couldn't find anything that fit that. So we saw what is the core value proposition we have, and then we built that custom, and then we take everything else standard. And I think that is also a strategy, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So these fixed contracts applications for ERP is a great call out. I hope we have a consensus now. They're far from dead. Right. At the end of the year, when you want your customized an integration of an ERP suite over there, whether it's Dynamics or SAP or other, when you wanted to compute for your balance sheet and submit to tax authorities, you don't want the numbers to depend on whether on some intricacies of English language and whether you have accidentally deployed a hyperbole or in that prompt. Right, you want this to be solid and for every time, right?
And audible.
And so,
yeah, but I also had a friend saying to me that it's very simple in an ERP, right? Sometimes you have a question saying like, how many of these tables did I sell over here last year or something like that, and that could be something for an agent to solve. But most people go into an ERP saying, how many open tasks do I have in this and that category? Right, and that's an interface thing. Seeing, okay, you have 5 things to do here and 10 things to do here. Okay, good. Let me fix that and move on to something else. And I think people miss that when they think everything's just a data layer and you asking an agent what you want to do, because you don't necessarily know what you want to do. You need to be told what to do sometimes, most of the time, probably.
So interface changes rapidly. The access to domain expertise, the bar to access domain expertise changes rapidly, which is exciting for the part of it, right? But I think we agree that SaaS is not dead, and do we agree that platforms are not dead either?
I don't know. Let me just ask you that. That was the next question, Damian. Right, Power BI. Right, everyone can build a dashboard in 2 seconds now with AI.
Right, and so we're excited about how much of innovation we are enabling with AI as an industry and as a company. But if AI creates 10 times more apps and agents, we need more shared identity, data, policy, deployment, observability, billing. The platform becomes less visible to users, but even more important to operators.
But don't you think there's because I've seen this at least in SMB market, which is also a big market for Power BI, right, and for the whole Power Platform, Power Suite, is that some companies have started to say, okay, we don't need to build with Power BI, we'll just do it with AI. We build these dashboards with an AI engine instead, and just deploy it easily. Isn't that a challenge?
And I'm sure it's going to make for. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to make for some exciting demos and POCs, right? And then when you want to ship it at scale reliably to clients around the world, you're welcome to come back.
Yeah, but what if you keep on being just an SMB? So, right, and my point is that SMB market is still a big market for you, right?
It is.
So, you want to sell it to the whole world and to Novo Nordisk and all the biggest companies in the world. Of course, it's a problem. But if you just want to, if you're just someone selling dentist appointments somewhere in Bavaria, does it really matter?
Well, let's say
you're losing the license, right? That's my point.
I think I would give it to Emilie, actually. Yeah, Emilie's been so much closer to our customers all those years. So
from my perspective, can they create the dashboard themselves? Yes. If they're only one dentist, is it a big problem? No. But if it's now suddenly 10 different dentist departments, or what should we call them, a chain of the dentists, then they need to share the data. And as soon as they share the data, given that it's a dentist, there is GDPR sensitive data, they need to actually treat that under the rules and guidelines. And they might not be experts in this, neither in data modeling or in governance or in securing the data, or even giving the right rights to the right people at the right layer. And then they start having a lot of challenges which they don't have when they buy a service like Fabric or Power BI. I do see it work well in companies that are experts. So I'm also on the board of 42, yes, here the CTO have definitely vibe coded the different dashboards that we're using, and it works really well because he has the level of knowledge and expertise that it takes to create this. Now, I've also seen other companies that have vibe coded beautiful dashboards, but where security, data quality, and so on is a problem because they don't have that deep insight or knowledge. So sometimes using these platforms is a bit like riding a bike with, little side wheels on. It helps make sure that you don't fall and hurt yourself.
Yeah, but the thing is just that no matter how much we can tell them that you need to think about this and that, right? I saw someone today on LinkedIn also post, or was it yesterday, that I just made our own HR system with AI. I don't know even one thing about code. I was almost going to write in the comment, have you thought about GDPR, security? I'm like, but what? He will never listen to it. He will just say, a consultant who wants to sell me hours. And so I was like, okay, skip that. Everyone else was already doing that. So it's like, okay, whatever. But because he wouldn't care, right? And that's just
here's something
5
to
years
note.
ago. But 5 years ago, he would have to buy a system, have to buy Power BI, have to buy some kind of platform or some kind of SaaS. So there must be a shrinkage, at least temporarily, in that market. That's just. Am I missing something here?
No, I'm certain that people are going to go out and try this. But again, it's a trade-off, because if you look at how many tokens you burn in order to create a system, you can easily spend more than you would have paid for a license. A Power BI license is like $10 a month. Now, how fast have you spent $10 on your Claude? And in 1 hour less? I don't even think that covers it. So currently, tokens are so expensive that it wouldn't always make economic sense to go and build your own system. And we can also be angry for a lot of reasons with EU regulation. But in NIS and NIS 2, there are also rules that says that the C-level of a company, as well as the board, are legally, personally responsible for cybersecurity, which means that if you have coded your own HR system and you get hacked or the data leaks, that can mean a lawsuit for your C-level or your board that in essence means that they either lose their summer house, their house, or their boat, or whatever. So luckily there are regulation in place that deters us from just going out and vibe coding everything.
So instead of them losing their houses, so instead of them losing their summer house, maybe they should focus on not just building tons of AI houses and just build the one they need or buy the one they need.
And the housing is such a good reference, because imagine that all of us could go and build houses according to our own ideas. What would it look like? It might get a lot of Klondike and a lot of bad housing. And of course, for those reasons, today we have a lot of building regulations to prevent us from building houses that might catch fire, break down, fall apart if there's an earthquake, and so on. And also, over the years, we've seen a lot of architectural patterns develop around what does it mean to build a good house, whether you're looking at Bauhaus or other structural patterns that has come out. And those are very similar to looking at good patterns for building good software. Now, luckily, the models are also learning to work with this and improving on creating good software. And I'm also seeing lately, working with Claude, that even if I have made a slight security mistake, it will come in and it will correct me and say, hey, don't you think it would be better if we're doing this? So we are seeing that they're supporting us in doing it. But I would say that the economics, when it comes to the price of tokens, is still not in favor of building your systems yourself, and neither is it from a security or a regulatory perspective. But nevertheless, people will learn a lot from trying to build these systems on their own.
But I also right now live in a house from 1622, right? Currently, at least for a couple of 2 months more. Then I'm moving into a new house from 1700. So,
wow.
But, no, it's actually true. But
that should be a bump in the internet speed. No?
yeah, exactly. No, but finally I get heating, and toilet. But
and maybe even video for the next podcast. No?
No, but my point is that what I realize while living here is that sometimes you don't want to open. There's some things you don't want to look inside because there's just legacy from 400 years here, right? And one of the things I realize when I'm looking, and it is actually true, when you go in, you open something up, then there's like pipes from what year, and you're like, what is is this? But when I've been thinking about everyone's doing these AI things, I just think about the whole VBA code, macros in Excel.
Yes.
How much of that is out there and still running the world, and just imagine that. The good thing about VBA was that it took skill to build something. Now it doesn't take skill to deploy, like I said before, you don't need 5,000 houses. We just need one good one. But now everyone's building 5,000 houses and putting them everywhere. How will the world look in 10 years? Better with AGI or just riddled with legacy AI code apps?
I acknowledge the fact that code is becoming cheap, just like the answers are becoming cheap. Right, and this is to one of your questions on whether the code was ever the mode as well. But back in the days, so it is common to look for nails when you have a new hammer, and it's common now to generate a lot of code and feel close to done when you have a working prototype. But going forward and for the foreseeable future, AI is going to cut the cost of a prototype, but not the cost of ownership. Right? The app is an app is a problem worth solving. I mean, users willing to change data you might use, a workflow evaluation, UX, identity, security, compliance, deployment, observability, support, and unit economics. Code is just one ingredient, right? The scale test is not, can we generate it? It is, can it produce a trusted outcome millions of times at an affordable cost? And, and that part, but so AI makes that harder. Because the solution spans engineering, data science, product, and infrastructure. Many companies have those disciplines, but not the ownership model.
So you're saying that, and I've had other people say this on the show as well, and it seems like it's something that's almost becoming a mantra for people who's a little bit in the know about having seen AI at scale, is that you shouldn't be focusing so much on can it do this, but you should be focusing on the trust aspect of if you trust it to do it over and over in a reliable way. And and I remember I think I saw at SAP's Sapphire event, I think I saw someone say, the reason I'm saying I think I saw is because I haven't found it afterwards in the paper, but that they were they were starting to call themselves a system of action instead of a system of records. And I just mentioned to one of my friends who worked there that you should be a system of trust instead. No one cares about action. You can do anything, But the world is so preoccupied with action right now. And as long as they keep on making more and more models, and we just keep seeing more and more benchmarks, and you get more and more push for, deploy this new model, deploy this new model. No. Let me stop deploying new models. Let me build something that makes this trustworthy, that makes it work, right? That should be the focus, right? But is it?
Yes.
It isn't right
and
now.
And this is still very much there's significant efforts and systematic to ensure both secure and compliant deployment of the models, and within Foundry actually get out of the box for responsible AI checks on both the prompts and the outputs that are separate models that continue to be developed in collaboration with the Office of the CTO. There is
but you saw that what people hated about Fable was that it kept on being restrictive, right? So do you think it works to have central restriction, or is that what you're talking about?
I certainly don't think this is a solved problem, which is actually my point. If the code is cheap, the guardrails, security, compliance, and reliability and efficiency are certainly neither cheap nor solved, and that's I believe where the mode as well is moving.
I said once, I think in the beginning of the entire podcast series, I said at one point that it has always seemed to me like we used to work with these symbolic AI systems where you had to build up the model to understand different scenarios. It had been to be sort of like nested if then else. And now we sort of self-trained models, but now we have to control them using the same if-then-else mechanisms.
Yes.
So there's this weird balance to the world, right? That we're spending the same effort.
I think for those companies who have a very high digital maturity, they can harness the models to utilize them to create even more efficient processes, even cheaper code, even better systems. But for those that are still down at level 1 or 2, they might struggle, and trust will be their biggest challenge.
So what should an SMB do, Emilie?
I'm
just asking about those because it seems like so enterprise.
On their value proposition and focusing on making that process more efficient. And when they have full clarity on that goal, if they need systems to be vibe coded for it, then they can consider it. But don't do it for everything. Focus on what your core value is, your core differentiator. Yeah. That's where you would consider using vibe coding. But only if there isn't already a system out there. Like, don't fix it if it ain't broken.
Yeah. Standard word doesn't matter, right? And custom word really matters, right? I think that makes sense. Yeah. There's also a lot of talk about right now, at least I saw, I think even Satya Nadella said it himself, right? That Microsoft doesn't want to become IBM, right? I think he said that in an interview, that they remember IBM or something like that. I think there was a notion like that. Is Microsoft really challenged by AI? And is there, a reason to believe that some of these, Microsoft will end up just becoming the infrastructure or the hardware, and then someone else would run away with the OS agentic layer? If we can call it that.
Scary, at least for one of us. But I'll love to also pass on to Emilie in a few minutes after. But let me just share a couple of thoughts with you first. Microsoft is definitely challenged, and that's primarily because the main interface to computing is changing. Right, as we've discussed at length earlier on. But also remember that IBM did not disappear. It lost the agenda setting position it held when value moved beyond the mainframe. Right, to your mobiles, to iOS, to Apple's chips, that I could continue. But so Microsoft still has a major opportunity and must turn into its own assets. Turn those assets into one coherent AI system faster than its own complexity slows it down. That's front and center for us now. But the reason I'm optimistic, Microsoft holds positions at every layer where AI value is might accumulate and compound. So we talk about the layers like reach, context and control, creation and intelligence and compute. On the reach, you have Microsoft 365, Teams, Dynamics, Windows, security products. On the context and control, you have Microsoft IQ, recently announced, Agent 365, Entra, Purview, and Defender. Right? On creation front, you have GitHub Copilot, Visual Studio, Copilot Studio, and Foundry. And on intelligence and compute, of course, you have Microsoft AI with our own in-house models also announced in the recent build by Mustafa. You have those open weight models on Azure. Our new Maya chip, the version 2, which actually I'm part of integrating now for M365 backend. And of course, deep collaboration and integrations with NVIDIA and AMD. We had the first, so speaking of assets, the largest fleet of Vera Rubin, and the first one, integrated with an Azure fleet. For a good head start on those next models and the next deployments. But the most strategic layer for us might be context. Right? Models may well commoditize, largely due to help from our talented counterparts from China. But a live, permission-aware understanding of people, business semantics, and authoritative knowledge is harder to copy. Right. That's also why the DRPs are for the same reason we expect them to stay around, among others. But so Microsoft IQ is Microsoft's attempt to share that context across agents and products. Right? The portfolio wins only if it feels like one system. Otherwise it is an integration tax. And that's that brings us to the key challenge I've been observing. Microsoft must ship model changes quickly. Make context and permissions cross product boundaries. We have those boundaries inside. And to convert inference efficiency into better products and margins, preserve trust, and probably also cannibalize old interfaces before others do. The biggest risk, frankly, in my experience, is organizational latency. Too many boundaries, red tape, overlapping platforms, and story clear on architecture slides.
So you said cannibalize all the interfaces, but you're not going to kill low code anyway, right? You just, Power Apps is still alive.
I have heard of no plans for doing that. And I don't even want to start that rumor. Thank you.
No. That's not my point. But you said you need to cannibalize our own interface, and some would say, right now I can build an app in 2 seconds with the Claude subscription, and I still have to spend days building the same thing in Power Apps, right? So there seems to be, I'm just saying. That's what I said earlier with low code. You don't have to answer it, Damian, but I just wanted. I threw it in there and then just leave it there. But what you were saying is that the difference to IBM is that you have the depth of penetration. You have these product dependencies that are so broad in the big suites, right? That you're so much bigger. You have a much bigger breadth of collaboration with the market in general. That's something, especially in the Satya Nadella era, has been very big in Microsoft. How you've been open to almost everyone and started working with Apple and collaborations all over. Yeah. But that also means that the biggest challenge, as you said, is the third thing is that you need to win the context, the business semantics that you have across all of that to really win. So you have the opportunity to do that, but it's also an immense task, right, for Microsoft. And that's where you're challenged, right?
Absolutely, and it's front and center. And I can tell you, we have a lot of talented big brains working on with gathering, consolidating, commoditizing, and lowering the bar to access the unique context that Microsoft systems have. And make it as easy as possible to use as context with your agents.
Because it's not enough
back
just
to our previous points, you can use the largest model with the best prompts, but if you don't have your company's context, there's only as much as you can do, right? And sometimes the right context with the right prompts can get you much further with a small model. That's been proven true again and again, and we believe in that hybrid future between the largest frontier models and smaller ones that work with with just the right context and the right prompts for your particular business integration scenario.
But I think the difficulty with business semantics, right, and is that you need to also be able to and want to define what is the good process. How does this supposed to work? How does this supposed to be? To understand it at least, right, and work with that. And I think that's where a lot of SaaS companies and Microsoft as well would be at danger right now for just ending up saying like, oh, you can do whatever you want, we don't care. So they become just an infrastructure or a platform infrastructure saying whatever, right? And then they become headless, but headless for them just means we just have some tables and then you do whatever you do with your agents. You don't software firms need to go in there and take a little bit more responsibility, like the tailor for the shape of the body of their clients, right? Isn't that really the mandate for every software technology firm right now to say, what is it that drives the value chain of our customers, and how can we accommodate that, build something that works for them, and not just say whatever you want to do, because whatever you want to do will be something everyone can do. Will it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the dangers of just becoming backbone right now, right?
So I believe there's a whole spectrum between, taking complete control over the interface, as some of the older products, pre-AI products do now, versus becoming just an API headless and do what you can. I think it's very important to see this as a spectrum, and We work on finding the right place in that spectrum. And in fact, that place on the place in that spectrum, the level of control again is going to vary between from power users to early integrators and such, right? I think the headless is a strong distribution strategy, but incomplete company strategy, right? It puts your capability where customers work. I mean, an agent, Copilot, Teams, an API, or other product. But surrender every experience, and you might also surrender the customer relationship, right? Feedback loop or brand and pricing power. But then you'd be just an interchangeable endpoint, right?
That's the point. That's the irrelevance of being an interchangeable endpoint, right? As I said, being just a backbone. That is the danger for all of these, for Salesforce, for Workday, for ServiceNow, for Microsoft as well, right? Isn't it right now in this new era?
So so please mind that there is a million types of different endpoints for for users with different proficiency available for integration by Microsoft. And anyone that wants to write their own apps and software on top of Microsoft technology will opt for APIs over ready interface any time. But again, on that spectrum, I think that the durable version is headless plus opinionated. Stay composable, but retain a control plane, system of record.
I've called it. It's funny you say composable, because I've said that the two trends right now is either going what I call compostable, so fully spin up, spin down, or going back to the monolith, where you need to define. Like I think SAP is doing it a little bit more with their Joule and their knowledge graph layers around all of their suite. It's more monolithic, where you define the process, and if you define the space, you can define the agents, and then you get autonomy. Whereas compostable seems to be counterintuitive to autonomous machines that move around in something that's just a Picasso painting. Don't you need? I've always thought you need more structure around it, right? World models, like Jan Kuhn is also working on, right? More strict maps.
Right. So on the compostable as well, it won't necessarily fly for when good low latency user interface is necessary, right? I mean, real time would require you to have the APIs and the resources spun up 24/7, which is of course also where efficiency becomes even more important.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah. And that's where the efficiency.
Reality just said hello, to the hype.
And deploying these incredibly complex systems these days, deploying them efficiently is prohibitive when it comes to both access to relevant hardware and skill set to optimize. And that's one of the reasons I believe that such a aggregation of technical talent as Microsoft represents and other hyperscalers as well, of course, will continue keeping it, and this will remain our opportunity to help clients and partners differentiate on our shoulders.
What do you see, Emilie? What do you see your companies wanting to do here, right? Because there's this whole, compostable, do something fast, or doing the tailored thing, or working with something that says this is how you're supposed to do it. Why do you see this going, right? Is Microsoft and the rest of the software world challenged by this in ways that will make it difficult for them to reach into their enterprise clients?
I mean, it would be wrong to say they're not challenged. I love when you ask, what does the companies want to do? And the first thing that springs to mind is that companies want to do many different things, and they run in many different directions. So your procurement department will want to stay with the vendors that you already have. Lucky for Microsoft, since they seem to be already in with all Danish companies that I know of so far, which helps. And then you can ask, well, what does the different parts of the company wants to do? Well, of course, if we are a developer, you want to have the headless, you want to use the APIs, you want to use the more advanced products from Microsoft like Foundry, like the infrastructure, because you want to be able to create your own products on top of it. That's great if you are a company that has the digital maturity to go in and do that. But if you're small SMB, what do you want to do? But you want to get everything to work. So you want to use your everyday Office M365 products. You want to be able to use your Copilot to query what have I been working on. And you want to use the Work IQ to have the metadata and knowledge around it to get that understanding without having to spin up a whole server on your own metadata for that, or a whole database for that. So that's a great help. And if you're somewhere in between and you want to have processes that are aligned and agents that work on top of it, well, maybe you want to go and use Dynamics. Maybe if you're just learning about how to build agents, you want to use the Copilot Studio. And so I think Microsoft really offers something for every step of the digital maturity ladder. And that's the key strength. And then already being in with the many Danish and Scandinavian companies, along with having the strategic, strong partnerships with those companies that are the furthest with developing models. Because as we've already talked about in this episode, you can spin up DeepSeek on Foundry. You can use Anthropic models. You can use Anthropic Cowork within M365 Copilot. So all of these edge possibilities are in there and you can use them. And if you are using GitHub Copilot, you get the best of orchestration and shifting to different models. So no matter what you want to do as a Danish company, I would say it's possible to do within the Microsoft suite. And the last part that is important is that the legal and the security office are often very happy with doing this, because it means that then the Microsoft contract and Microsoft are responsible for the security and the compliance, and not you as a company. Whereas if your developers are sitting and vibe coding your whole platform yourself, you are fully responsible for any breach on data or any security or leak. And that's a responsibility you don't necessarily want to have on your hands. Back to the NIS and NIS 2.
Right, that's so true, right? And the most companies are not buying, as I said also earlier, but for speed, but actually buying for security and compliance and for reliability and for trust, right? And that's where, these companies still come in. Yeah.
Microsoft's strategy in that way is really good. And if we have to come back to like the author of strategy, Chinese Sun Tzu, what he says is that it's not just about having a good strategy, it's also about having the right army and being able to execute on it. And there, it seems that Microsoft does have the right army of product suites for all different levels of the digital maturity and different kind of sizes of companies. So I think they're standing in a strong position. And if they keep having a competitive edge on their pricing, I will continue to be an MVP for another 5 years, I believe.
But I think also, if we then take this whole argument around what Microsoft can do and then turn it into something like Europe and say Europe, Christina Cafaro said that Europe should try to avoid becoming or staying a digital colony. But is Europe really that when we work with regulation and compliance? That's what everyone's mocking us. US innovates, China replicates, and the EU regulates, right? But regulation seems to be where some really is a big part of trust lies, right? Innovation and replication is the models and the speed, but regulation isn't that trust related, guys? And you're saying that trust is important. Is Europe really challenged here? Is Europe going to be the new IBM? But that's a weird thing to say. But you get my point.
There's no doubt that our collaboration with the American companies were more efficient when there was a greater degree of trust, and that there are some challenges when it comes to the Cloud Act and the Patriot Act that simply makes it inefficient in some ways for Europe to work with the US as their closest partner. That's why Europe is focusing to a larger degree on digital sovereignty. Europe also has to. Today, 80 to 90% of all cloud and SaaS solutions run in Europe is running with the big US tech giants. That's substantial.
That's a lot of money going out of Europe.
It is, but it's not just about money. It's also about power. If the US tech companies decided to turn off all of our systems tomorrow, we in Europe would simply be screwed. And we have to wake up to that reality. And we also have to wake up to the fact that it's not because we can't create chips. We have ACML in the Netherlands that can create the chips. We do have big companies, whether that is Hertz Similar in Germany, that have the cloud power. So we can do these things. And if you're looking back at the Leiden ranking that we were discussing earlier, it seems that our universities also have the innovation that we need to create the kind of softwares and digital platforms that we need. And last but not least, most of the researchers that are coming to the US to build the most fantastic AI models over there do come from Europe. So do we have all of the right ingredients? Yes. So what will it take to get our ducks in a row and actually execute on this? Probably a greater focus on digital sovereignty and competition and less regulation.
I think Christian Cafaro said that we're spending, and almost all of our digital spending is going to US firms, right? And she's just asking for, you mentioned procurement earlier, Emilie, right? She said that if we just say that 20% of European, tech procurement goes to European tech, we would be in a much different place because we have the skills and we could do it, but we spend all the money somewhere else, right? So would you be changing the procurement rules?
Oh, now we're getting into like international law and competition. I don't think that's the right thing for me to answer, but I could see why some in Europe might be tempted to go in that direction.
I have some thoughts. Because, if you ask what it would take for Europe, it's a big question. It's a big question dear to close to my heart. What it would take for Europe to avoid becoming overly dependent on the West or East. Because let's agree, I think neither of us has any doubt that Europe does not like research. No. But if it struggles to convert research into scaled supply. Right. So in July 2025, the Synergy Research estimated that Amazon, Microsoft, and Google held 70% of Europe's cloud infrastructure market. Europe providers held about 15%. Right. This is an industrial capacity problem, not one regulation alone can solve.
Where were you educated, Damian, by the way?
I've actually so I was very lucky to pursue and receive my PhD with DTU, the cognitive systems section, under the supervision
in Denmark, in Copenhagen, Lyngby.
Yes, right? In Denmark, Copenhagen, Lyngby, under supervision of Professor Leiskar.
And now you work where?
With Microsoft, but I was actually also with Microsoft in Denmark when I was pursuing that PhD. That's been actually crossed. That was actually industry academic partnership that was enabled by the Innovation Fund Denmark. This actually
just saying that you're a case point, right? You're a case point, right? You did the right studies, and now we educated you in Europe, right? And now Anyway, say what you want to say.
So. No one says I'm going to retire here, and there's been. So I know where you were getting with that. And,
I'm not getting at anything what you're doing.
So let me just say I have no plans to retire. Here, I remember a positive impact from the collaboration because there's actually been this. While this was the first industrial PhD project for Microsoft in Denmark, there was another one that followed. That had we had a pretty clear agreement with the site leadership that if I'm able to put a hole in this wall between industry and between Microsoft and the academia in Denmark and pave way for the following. More projects would follow, and there has been another industrial PhD project that followed, also co-sponsored by the Innovation Fund Denmark. There have been multiple additional collaborations that I'm not prepared today to go into details. But there is. It's this risk-taking across boundaries that we've been emphasizing a few minutes ago about the Chinese AI labs. So I'd like to point out that this is not an isolated mindset that our Chinese counterparts have invented. We are capable of that in Europe. In fact, in the same latent ranking where the Chinese universities are coming up high, DTU is also very high.
Yeah,
that's actually, in fact, a second in the Nordics, seventh in entire Europe. And I part of my PhD, one of the lessons I had the privilege to learn under within cognitive systems section is just how much opportunity for novel results is there by pursuing the intersections of sciences. I've not seen this before. People regularly sitting at the same table, despite its spanning computer science, physics, neuroscience, philosophy, even, and in multiple universities or industry partners. Tommy Ehlers, a few years ago, when I was still in Denmark, made me aware that actually Denmark is in the top 3 when it comes to R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP.
That's interesting.
And the Innovation Fund Denmark is one of the illustrations. It is there is so I remember very fondly the industry academic and environment in Denmark as one very conducive for cross-boundary collaboration and cross-boundary innovation, which I propose to you with the examples of Chinese labs. The time is now. Or yesterday, to pursue the innovation across boundaries, and within boundaries, within domains, rely increasingly more and more on that expertise commoditized by AI models.
You know what? I really, Damian, I am. What do you call it? I am inclined to say. This ends this episode, and I'm going to ask you the final question, because I really love that you talk about, the time is now for collaboration. And I think, the whole podcast series is is one big polyhistor endeavor of having so many different voices speak about AI and change and enterprises. I'm a historian by myself, by the way. I don't know if you know that, Damian, but now you do.
Amazing.
Right? Yeah, so we're mixing it up, right? And I really do think, except if you, Emilie, have a final comment as well, I really do think this is a brilliant finale to a great episode here.
Well, I have to toot the horn of EU and Europe and just make aware that compute is being built. There is 200 billion investment AI going on. There is 20 billion being put into gigafactories. And when it comes to regulation, the EU Commission have started what they call their 28th regime, which is a proposal to remove at least 25% of the general business and 35% of small, medium-sized business with regulations, reporting, and compliance in order to make EU more streamlined and give room for digital innovation. So as an economist, I am also optimistic about the future of Europe, and I think we're going in the right direction. And of course, I'd like to toot that horn.
Awesome. I think this is a great and an optimistic note to end on as well. I think this has been a terrific episode, both of you. I'm really happy with your participation in The Only Constant. I'm happy to have you back again, Emilie, and I'm really happy to have you on, Damian, for the first time. And I usually have one capstone question in the end, right? And I've already asked Emilie that, so I've thought about it, and people don't get to do another constant. You said you're constant, Emilie. You have to be at peace with that. It's going to be on your tombstone one day. So I hope you thought it through back then. And now I hope, Damian, you've thought it through as well. I'm going to ask you the question in a second. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
So, Damian, what is the only constant?
Well, if I had to name Damian's constant, I think it would be... cross boundaries early. Then turn what you find into a reliable capability that other people can use. So we're entering this unusual moment. AI is beginning to commoditize in-domain expertise. The bounded coding, mathematics, science, or reasoning tasks that most evaluation benchmarks measure. That does not make experts obsolete. It makes more specialized capability available on demand. As depth within one domain becomes cheaper, the scarce skills become choosing the right problems, connecting disciplines, judging trade-offs, and owning the outcome. And this is therefore the time to rethink old boundaries. I'd propose research and product, data science and software engineering, model and system, and indeed academia and industry. Innovation increasingly comes from staying inside one box, but not from staying from inside one box, but from carrying an idea across several of them. My own career moved across those boundaries, from engineering and data science through an industrial PhD and that joined academia with industry, to machine learning architecture and inference systems at Microsoft. The technology changed. The question did not. How do you connect the scientific possibility to operational reality? The DeepSeek stories are examples. The access to a new model was only the start. The value came from model, infrastructure, product, safety, and operations for teams moving together. Heroics make a good anecdote, just like POCs. But if every release needs the same emergency, the system has learned nothing. The real work is turning that response into a repeatable path. This is also why I care about documentation, collaboration, and optimization creates value once. A platform, method, or guide that lets 5 teams apply it compounds. The best evidence I did my job is not that I remain indispensable. It is that the capability moves when I leave the room. My constant is not a model, company, or specialty. It is staying curious beyond my own discipline, rigorous enough to test the connection, practical enough to ship it, and generous enough to make it reusable. AI gives us unprecedented access to depth. Our opportunity is to combine that depth across all boundaries. And this is where I believe the next wave of innovation will come from.
Something other people have said, like complexity always increases, and we need to, find the red line in that. And for me, it also echoes what could, I have decided never to say my own constant, right? Because I am the only constant in the only constant. That's a joke, anyway. Yeah. But I think if I would have an only constant, it would be something like these cross-domain conversations being important, and the curiosity of bridging these things and connecting them in different ways with different people who have different insights from different places of the world. I think that's interesting. I think now this is a thought that just came into mind, right? That John Rawls said that you should create society behind a curtain of uncertainty, so you don't know where you'll show up tomorrow. And I think that perspective is sort of like a mantra for me as well, saying I don't know where I'll show up tomorrow, so I need to discover how all the different perspectives look to see what happens in that connection, right? But so just saying that it resonates. It resonates a lot. Yeah, it really does.
Thank you. And kudos to you, Lasse. You brought in historian, computer scientists, and economists together in one room. More power to you. Thank you very much for having us. And as for the uncertainty of where I'll end up next, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Europe.
Awesome.
You both make a great case.
And Emilie, I also hope, I know now you said in the same room, but I know Emilie, she's somewhere in the Indian Ocean right now. So I hope that we'll also end up in Europe at one point again, Emilie.
Yeah,
but this is brilliant.
Emilie will end up in Europe.
I think I'm the only one in Europe right now. But guys, thank you so much for being here with me, and thank you for this amazing episode. It's been a real privilege and a pleasure to host you.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.